Okay, when you start Microsoft Project and begin a blank project, you'll see a screen that looks like this. So it doesn't matter if you're using it on a Porto or if you've downloaded the software to your own laptop, or maybe using the lab computers. I'm actually not sure if Microsoft Project is installed on those. But anyway, you get a screen that looks like this that has kind of typical to a lot of Microsoft products, right? A ribbon on the top, then each ribbon is divided into subpanels and then icons, and if the icons have more commands to them, then you get this little down triangle or down arrow. And then you have two main panels, or two main parts to the screen. On the left is the task screen, and this is where we're going to be inputting information about the tasks, and it is kind of structured similar to like a spreadsheet in Excel. And then on the right side is the calendar view. So as we put in tasks and schedule them, we're going to see their sort of a Gantt chart appear on the right side. So the first thing that we want to do is change the time scale. It defaults to weeks and then days of the week, but for the project that we're going to be doing as an example today, and also for your senior design, we actually want to think in terms of months and weeks. So you can set up to 3 different tiers. This is just 2 levels, or date levels, 2 tiers, and we're going to go ahead and keep that, but we're going to change the weeks to months and the days to weeks. And so you'll see how it kind of compresses the calendar view. The other thing that we want to do for this project and also for your senior design project is go ahead and set the date. You're going to be working on this schedule sometime after you've already started the project, and we want the chart to be for the entire sort of academic year. So we're going to go ahead and set the start date back to September 8th. So that's the day the project kickoff for senior design, and when you likely began work on your project. So we'll set that, and we'll see a green line appears showing when the project began. So in the handout that accompanies this video, I put together a pretty skeleton view of a roadway design project. And so I based this off of a DOT project that had, if I'm remembering right, over 300 tasks. And so obviously, who wants to type in 300 things for an example? But it still has a lot of the main tasks and dependencies that a real road project would have. So if we look at it, we can see, that I have, 5 main tasks, starting with surveying. Drainage is the hydrology and preliminary sort of hydraulic part to it. We have soils and geology, and then all those things need to happen before we can actually do the roadway design. And then there's a little bit about bid letting. So this is releasing the contract plans and putting it out to bid, and providing a contract to a contractor who is successful in that bid. So we have these tasks. So we're going to call survey is kind of a main task A, and then it has these subtasks, and then it has durations, and these durations are in days. So going to here, we're going to go ahead and put surveying, and then I have A1 is GPS control, A2 is targeting. So targeting is used in aerial photography. Before they can go out and fly the plane, they have to put a few things that can be seen in the photography, seen by the both the pilot and in the pictures that are done. And those have known points, so they're linked to the control. So A4 is processing the control survey data. So this is coming back and ensuring that the quality control and processing the field survey data. This has to do with taking the data from the aerial photography. So anyway, so we have these main tasks. I do want to point out that when we do this, see that in the task mode, it should default to auto scheduled. Please check this early on. You can always go back and change it, but there's 2 versions. There's auto scheduled and there's manual scheduled. If I change it to manual, I think I'm gonna wait. I don't know why it's doing that. To manual, you'll see it has a pin, but you want these to be auto scheduled. So as I said, you just change that down here. And For the duration, so the surveying task is the main task, and it's made up of subtasks. So how we define things as sort of subtasks to a main task is through this indent and outdent, right? So if I indent it, this becomes a subtask to the thing above it, and outdent makes these at the same level. So what I want to do is go ahead and indent all of these subtasks. We can start to see things. Everything is defaulting to 1 day, but it has that question mark, meaning that you haven't actually put any information. So in the chart, it said that this took 15 days, 10 days, 5 days, 15 days, and 10 days. So as I enter these days, we see the tasks. I can hover over them to get information. I can click on them and change the color. I can actually move them, but I don't want to, but I could. I can physically move them around. Right now, everything is defaulting to the start date. If I had things that were particularly long tasks and I didn't want to figure out how many days, I could put weeks, right? Or I could, cancel. I could put 15 months, right? Or I can just go back to 15. Oh, it's 15 days. Right, so it'll recognize lots of different units of measurement, and you could put years if you had a very long project. So we see that these each have different durations, and we have it sort of on auto schedule. It also created this main survey task that is dependent on its subtasks. So right now, since they're all starting on the same day, its duration is just the maximum of the subtasks. So I'm going to sort of pause the video and go ahead and finish out the table so you don't have to watch me type all that. Okay, so I have all the tasks in, and I am really using, I have these all, sorry, over indented. Let me get these back out there. I use the convention of sort of the alpha and alphanumeric for the subtasks just to be able to illustrate some of the dependencies a little bit easier. But for your own project, there's no reason to kind of use this structure. You can go ahead and name them without calling it, you know, sort of task A or subtask A1. But anyway, I have all of these in. I did want to point out a special thing when we put the duration at 0 days. It's what's called a milestone. And so as soon as it sees that 0 day, it actually shows up a little bit differently on the Gantt chart that's being created on the right side. And it shows it as a diamond with a date. So these are good things to use for like your big submittals for your senior design. So when your presentations or when your final reports or status updates are due. So you just set those as a 0. So you'll see that everything is on auto schedule. Everything started on 9/8, and we see all these main tasks being, the duration being set by the longest subtask in there. So now the key piece and sort of the power behind using scheduling is really thinking about dependencies. So looking at how I have defined dependencies here, let's just look at surveying. And so in order to do targeting, which is setting the targets for the aerial photography and for the pilot, you need to first have control, so overall project control, and then you set these targets in places that are highly visible, usually big parking lots and anyway paved areas where they show up. So this task is dependent on that task, and the way we do that in projects in Microsoft Project is using this predecessor. So one way to do it is to say, okay, targeting is dependent on GPS control. It's in row 2. So if I put a 2 in here, it creates this dependency. So it's, you know, I see this arrow show up. I can click on this arrow. It's going to default to the most common type of dependency, which is a finish to start. And so it means that this task can start as soon as the other one is finished. There are other types. You could have start to start, where you're mandating they both start at the same time or they both finish at the same time. A little bit more rare is start to finish, which just reverses these. The convention, and I strongly encourage you to use this, is to actually list your subtasks in order of when you're going to do them. So it's pretty rare to essentially list them in backwards order. This would be as if we put GPS control down here and targeting there. But occasionally you might need to have that. You can also set legs. So you could put like a 5-day leg, so maybe there's something that needs to happen internally between when one task finishes and another starts that isn't a task in itself. And so if I put that leg, it just forces there to be a certain duration. It can also have negative, right? You can have a negative thing there to saying I can start this about 2 days, right? Or, you know, whatever I said, 2 days before this one finishes. But the most common one, and probably the one you're going to use the most, is just the 0 days. So, anyway, so when I'm looking at dependencies, now if I go ahead, you can insert and delete tasks as you go along. This is where you can also change them between manual and auto schedule. These are dynamic, meaning I could insert another task here between GPS control and surveying, and it would update this predecessor thing. Another way of doing it is to click the down arrow and it will show you all these. And so this can be somewhat easier to see instead of trying to remember or searching for the rows, is just going in here and saying targeting is dependent on GPS control. So similarly, I said A3 is dependent on A2 from the chart, so I can set that. A4 is dependent on A1, so I'm just reading this from the chart, and A5 is dependent on A4, so processing all that. So from that, I've set all the dependencies within the subtask of surveying, and you can see that it's updated all and created these dependencies and pushed out. Instead of having a duration of 15 days, now surveying has a duration of 40 days, so it takes into account all that dependencies. So I'm going to pause here and go ahead and finish some more of this so you don't have to watch me put it in. So here for the geology report, to kind of finalize the geology recommendations, it needed to have all of the tasks. So you can put these things in if you type them in with commas, but also you can just click multiple dependencies. Now for the design, it requires, the overall task of design requires that the subtasks, or the main tasks of surveying, drainage, and soils and geology be complete. So we can also have main tasks have dependencies. So I'm going to go ahead and put the geology tasks dependent on all 3 of those. And so what we see over here is that the design can't begin until all those others complete. Now, if I look at the tasks of surveying, drainage, and geology, I see that drainage is the one that takes the longest. It has a duration of 90 days. And so it's created what we got, some extra in here. So I have some flexibility in my schedule, such as what it's showing, because I don't want to keep the design from starting any later, but it does say that if I have about 15 days of what we call float for geology and 50 days for surveying, right? So if the survey crews get backed up with other jobs, I know that I have 50 days where it's not going to, I could start surveying later and it's not going to impact the beginning of the design. So I'm going to go ahead and pause again and finish all the rest of the dependencies. Okay, so I have the rest of the dependencies in here, and I can scroll along and see the various things. So we have the design. A lot of the design pieces, right, the traffic people can be working, and grading. A lot of this can be happening concurrently, but then we have the prepare the final plans, and then we have this milestone. So as I showed earlier, these milestone dates show up pretty well in the Gantt chart, right? So we can start to see when we have these major deliverables due, and then it's showing that we can let the project as early as August 2nd. So one of the things that I don't think that Microsoft Project does particularly well is, and exporting to be able to create, sort of nice looking graphics. And so like if I go to the print view, you'll see that it essentially puts so much sort of legend and text in there that it isn't particularly easy to read, because I end up with all these blank spots. So you can mess around with sort of printing to PDF in different sizes to try to get it to look well. I have more luck with kind of working and pulling screen grabs. So one of the things that you can do right away is maybe hide some of these fields that you don't need. So I can hide these. You can always bring them back using the view. But I'm going to, now that I've set them all to auto and I don't need to see that anymore, I'm going to go ahead and hide those. Resource names, this is, we're just using a tiny fraction of the power of Microsoft Project. Resource names are ways you can allocate both personnel and like field equipment. So if this was a construction project and you had a certain number of graders or pavers, right, and you could allocate those resources or paving crews to it. But we're going to go ahead and hide these ones so we can kind of get it to look a little bit cleaner. We can also, once we have it in here, we can try to use your zoom window. I have the control and zoom. You can try to get it to fit in there. But anyway, I have pretty good luck either pulling screen grabs depending on how many tasks that you have, or going ahead and printing to PDF, but printing to a large sort of format PDF, and then kind of pulling a screen grab from the PDF. But as you can see, it can be a little challenging. In the sheet I have, there's some guidance about printing as well. I will point out there's different charts that you can do. So one of the ones that can be particularly useful is what we call a detail Gantt chart. So I just went and did the more views and do apply. What this does is it puts the critical tasks in red. And so these are the individual tasks, subtasks, that are controlling the overall duration. So when we talked about float a little bit earlier, that's where you have extra time, and so these tasks can move without impacting the final sort of date of the last deliverable. What this does is it puts that critical path, right, and you can very quickly see. Not sure why it wants to. I have to hide these things again. I'm going to leave that one, but hide it this way. So you can quickly see which tasks are available, are most critical. So if you want to make, if this overall delivery date or bid letting date isn't acceptable, these are the tasks that you would have to compress. Put additional crews if you wanted to, be able to let the project earlier. The other piece that I wanted to talk about is on what's called the setting the baseline. So when you do this project and set your schedule for the project proposal plan, then you're going to go ahead and execute the project over the academic year. And what you want to do is go ahead, when you have the final schedule that you've put into your project proposal, you want to go ahead and set the baseline. Now, as come December and you're doing a status update, there's a couple of things that are really helpful for showing where you are on the project. And one of them is % complete. So if I hit I keep bringing up the same one. Hold on a sec. Okay. Sorry. You want to hit information. And one of the things that you can do is do % complete. And so by the time of my status update, maybe this one is 100% complete. keep wanting to double click instead of right click. Information, right? And maybe this one is 75% complete, right? And so you can get these bars that show that. Another way of doing it is after you've set the baseline and you're doing the percent complete, you actually update. The detail one has a lot more columns, but I'm going to go back to just the regular Gantt chart. To get just those columns to look better. So as the project goes on, you can update, right? So maybe this surveying task didn't take 40 days, but it took 50 days, right? And so you would keep updating this, but because you set the baseline, you could go and do what's called a tracking Gantt. And we'll see. It's going to show what you originally proposed, and then it's going to show what actually happened, right? And so you can, it's a visual way of showing, you know, what things took longer and longer than expected or shorter than expected. And so that's useful. So the last part of the handout was just kind of asking a couple questions. So how soon will the project get done given the above tasks? I think it's pretty easy to see how with the auto scheduling, right, and you know, you can quickly see what that last date is. The critical tasks, that was the second question. That's what I showed you with the detailed Gantt chart. So those are the tasks that are driving the duration of your project. So if you want to make up time, or if you get behind, if you want to make that time up, you need to focus on the critical ones. And then the last one, so the survey department is running with less survey crews than usual and would like to know how long they can delay. And so that's this idea of float, right? That we have 50 days. So you can let the survey crews delay up to 50 days without impacting the overall project. So hopefully that's helpful. And I think Microsoft Project, I believe, has about kind of 50% of the market share. So it's used both on the design side, so controlling or managing the design aspects of the project, like the example I used, but also on the construction side. So how you can get projects done. A lot of contracts with agencies, particularly public agencies, have things like we call them liquidated damages. So if your contract goes over the final date, you as the contractor actually have to pay the client money. But there also can be, on the other side, incentives. So this happens a lot in transportation, where there's a pretty big impact to the system when things are under construction. So the contractor can get bonuses for finishing early. And so managing the time duration of the project is obviously important for the bottom line of construction companies. So good luck. Thanks.